Hello again and welcome to Emotionally Speaking. I'm Carla McLaren and I've got a good question today, and it's a bit long, but it's talking about our shaming culture. And you can see our shaming culture really strongly on the internet, where someone will put up a beautiful something on YouTube and then people will come and they will criticize it. Or someone will say something on Twitter that's just this side of like a little bit uncareful, and then the Twitter vultures will come out and they will pick apart everything that's being said. Same on Facebook. If you say something even the slightest bit wrong, everyone has to come and challenge you. And corrections are not shaming. So if someone, if you write something on Facebook and someone says, I think you've got a typo in the first line, and you're like, no! And you go quickly and fix your typo, that's different than people coming on to tell you that it's not okay for you to say or feel what you think, and that you have to kind of do everything perfectly. I think in many ways, there's 1,000 reasons we are in the situation we are politically now. But I think in many ways, a lot of the shaming culture and the perfectionistic culture that have arisen around social justice have created a huge backlash, where people are saying politically correct as if it's a swear word, right? Oh, it's politically correct. And what comes behind that, I think, is that people have been shamed so much for what they say and what they think and what they think they were going to say and what they're, for every part of their behavior and every part of their way of being in the world, that as you would, they've come out fighting, right? Come out fighting, why I oughta. And I think this is a really important thing about the response to people of being shamed. Now, I talk about this in the shame video from a couple of months ago, but here's what you want to see in healthy shame. You want to see a person's shame come up and go, did you really mean to do that? Or are you really going to do that? And the person go, busted. No, I didn't. Phew, stop. That's healthy shame. That's healthy and authentic and appropriate shame. Coming up in the person and saying, don't do it, because you're going to break the boundaries of another person, and it's just not even nice, right? But what you don't want to see is a person saying something that they feel okay about, right? Their shame did not come up and say, don't say this. So they might say something about, I don't know, whiteness. I mean, that's a huge thing right now, whiteness. And I've got a lot of whiteness. It's like I noticed something about white culture. It could be anything, right? I can't think of anything right now because I've been off the internet for a couple of days, so all the shaming has gratefully fallen away. But people would come on and say, well, that's just white privilege, right? You're just a privilege, that's male privilege, that's this, that's that. And what people hear is you suck. Right? You and your whole body, every part of your whiteness sucks, and your maleness sucks, and everything about you is toxic. And there are very few people who can hear that without being injured, because it is a very injurious thing to say to someone. And many of us, when we're injured, we come up, why I oughta, right? So we fight. So the way that much of what I will call emotionally incompetent activism does is it engages people's fight or flee or freeze behaviors. It doesn't engage their shame, it engages their panic. Well, I get to fight the lion, right? So if someone says something that's uncareful and I say, well, that's just white privilege talking. Do you like how I said that in a white way? And that person feels shamed, unless they've done a tremendous amount of work and they know how to work all their emotions, especially their shame, which most people never learn. I'm going to say never. It takes people a long time to learn. What you're going to see is their panic. And the thing about panic is it's there to save a person's life. So there's not a lot of ethics in panic because there shouldn't be, right? If if your life is in danger and the options are fight, flee, or freeze, you may have to push somebody or punch somebody to fight. You may have to push them away as you flee. And as you freeze, you may have to abandon everybody but yourself, right? There's no sort of ethics. There are some parts of panic where, like if you're driving along and all of a sudden you brake and your hand immediately goes out to protect the person next to you. Like panic can have that protective aspect. But in many cases, there's no ethics there. So when you shame someone, they may react unethically, right? And then if you don't realize what you did because you don't understand emotions and how they work, you would say, you see what I'm saying? If you even ask people about their white privilege, they become defensive, and then you see it even worse, right? And I've seen this like so many times, over and over and over and over again, and not just in activist cultures. I saw it in the skeptical culture. Skeptical people, there's a specific culture of people calling themselves the skeptics, and their self-stated job is to protect people from alternative medicine, alternative spirituality, new age kind of ideas. And because I was in that community, I really started like studying the skeptics really hard. I was like, you guys know this doesn't work, right? So if you tell us that we're fools and dupes and that we're being manipulated and we don't know enough about the world, and you're shaming us completely and telling us that we're just unintelligent. How is that going to work that we're going to come over and say, why, yes, tell me from your great, stand on Mount Olympus what I should be thinking and feeling, right? It was just the most amazing failure of communication that I'd ever seen, but I see it, in many different places where people think, I'm going to shame you out of the behavior. And what happens with most people is they don't get shamed out of the behavior, they move into panic, and then they dig into the behavior, right? Because now the panic is fighting, fleeing, or freezing about whatever the idea was, whiteness or whatever. So a lot of this current violence, social violence, and knee-jerk attacking and fight, fleeing, freezing, fleeing, getting off of social media and never talking to anybody, freezing, not being able to respond at all, you're just frozen, fighting, sarcasm, counterattacks, calling people social justice warriors as an insult, right? I just look at it, understanding emotions, I just look at it and I go, really? Are we doing this again? Honest to God, are we doing this again? Because I'm tired of it. I was tired of it 10 or 15 years ago. And maybe people need to see it a whole bunch before they get tired of it too. But shaming other people only works if the other person cares about you and if the other person has the capacity to work with shame in themselves, and if you do it in such a way that they can hear it. So here's how you might shame someone intentionally if you had skills. So someone says, blah, 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 white culture. And you are immediately going, whoa, that is a sign that this person is ignorant about the situation. Do I know them well enough to speak to this? If you don't, then you can think of something else to do, or pull someone else aside, or maybe ask a question and cool the thing down. If I do know them well enough, I might say, maybe not in public because I don't want to shame them in public, right? To say, I'm not sure if you know that speaking about white culture in that way actually comes from it comes from the white supremacist community. I don't know if you knew that. And that's all I wanted to say, right? You notice how I was kind of sideways? I ended with, that's all I wanted to say. I don't know if you knew that, right? I wasn't like, you have just repeated something from the white supremacist community, right? Blah, blah. Right? I'm not coming at the person, right? knowing that I care about the person, they may not have any idea where they got that idea from, and I still want to have an opening for a conversation, right? So I'm saying something that is shameful without putting a whole bunch of shame on the person. I'm not attacking the person. I'm not calling them a rube or a dupe or a secret KKK or whatever like that. I'm not like throwing a bunch of things on them, because I understand that if they realize what they said and they are the caring person I know them to be, they should have a huge well of shame come up, right? Huge. And for some people, they don't know how to work with that, right? And so my job now, in the presence of this shame that I have brought to the person because I've told them what has just happened, I need to be willing to be with them and watch them. And maybe even when I see the shame come up, it's like, don't go to a whole bunch of shame right now. I don't want you to feel ashamed of yourself. I just wanted to know if you knew where that came from, because there's a lot of white supremacist language and ideas moving through culture, a lot of it on Facebook and Twitter and lots of places on the internet where it's infiltrating. I just wanted to know. So don't go to extreme shame. I don't feel like that's necessary for you right now. But do you see how much work it is to actually be in the presence of another person who needs a corrective? And you're going to do it because you know them well enough and you care about them. But it is a very, very delicate thing. It is a very delicate thing to correct someone. And I've done it and it's worked well, and I've done it where the person just keeps fighting. And so I just, okay, all right. If you want to talk about this later, let's do it. Or if you just want to say that's it for our relationship, let's do that too, right? Because the person doesn't have the internal emotional capacity to manage the shame that they feel. And they might come back to you 2 years later when they figure it out and say, remember that time you said that thing? I was like, yeah. Well, here's why I reacted like I did. And, there's always the door that's open for that. But because we haven't learned to work with shame, and because we don't have a lot of emotional flexibility inside us because of the way that emotions have been treated since time immemorial, it is almost impossible for a person to deal with being shamed and not go to panic, right? If you care about people, you won't shame them, right? But if they have done something that really needs to be addressed, and you need to apply some, this is a problem, or that hurt me, or whatever, it's important to do so in a delicate way, not to treat them like a baby, but in a delicate way, because if their shame is working as it should arise. It should arise in them. And then we get to see how do they deal with that, right? So the shaming culture that we have created comes from people who don't understand shame themselves, right? So if I'm going to say, you're just, whatever, you're using white supremacist language as a part of your white privilege. It's me wanting to feel more intelligent and more socially aware than that other person. It's me one-upping. It's me putting someone else down below. It is me attributing the worst intentions to someone instead of that they're ignorant, or that the way they heard about it was also done in an ignorant way. I talked in the video about white privilege. Most people explain white privilege in a way that just makes me shake my head. I'm like, what are you talking about? Go take a sociology class. That's where it came from, right? I'll put a link to the white privilege video. But there's been so much shaming, so much blaming, so much attacking, so much panic, so much rage, that right now it's like this maelstrom, this storm of shaming, fighting, harder shaming, harder fighting, shaming, fighting, getting in a group of people who are also fighting. And now you've got anti-shame fight groups or avoiding shame fight groups. And then you've got shamers gathering together to say, look at these jerks. Now they're getting together in a group because we knew that they were all white supremacists or whatever they were. You know, we knew they were all this. And not even understanding the social mechanisms that help those groups form, right? If you want to help someone, a group form, create an outside enemy. And the group will go like this, right? It's a part of our primate past, right? So if you want to help people move out of groups, don't be an enemy, right? Don't shame people, right? What you want to see with people, and especially with kids, you want to see their own shame come up in a way that they can manage to correct their behavior so that they become aware socially and more skilled. What you don't want to see is a person making decisions based on the fear of being shamed by others, because that means that they don't have good boundaries, they don't have good instincts, they're just, avoiding. Rah, rah. And if people come to shame you, sure, you're going to be like, but also understand that if people are shaming you, they really don't understand how emotions work. They don't really understand how primates work. They don't really understand social behavior. They don't understand human behavior. They've learned a very, very poor emotional behavior that is always going to blow up in their face. And the few times that it doesn't, they're going to hold up as like this amazing thing of my powers of shaming have worked. But when it doesn't blow up, it's usually because it's a person who has learned to work with shame and can listen. Right? Even when what is being thrown at them is garbage, they can take it in and say, you know what? I realized that I did pick that up on 4chan. I did pick that up on Twitter. I didn't know where it came from. I just started saying it. And thank you for telling me about it. I would ask you next time to come at me as if I am an intelligent person who simply doesn't understand that thing, but understands the world. Right? So when you're shaming, remember you're going to see the fight almost always. And so you're going to see not the best of humankind, you're going to see humankind in panic, trying to save their lives. And there aren't very many ethics there. If you can instead ask a question, did you know that this thing was from 4chan, or did you know that this thing is from, the KKK or whatever? Are you meaning to use that? And if the person says, yeah, I feel comfortable about it, then you'll have more information about who that person is, right? But you won't have to go around injuring everybody you see in the name of social justice or whatever it is, or in the name of political correctness, or in the name of political incorrectness, or in the name of whatever it is. If you're shaming other people for any reason whatsoever and they go into panic, it's because that's what happens for a lot of people. So back off of the shame if you want the world to change, right? Shame needs to come from within the person and be manageable, authentic, and healthy. It doesn't come from the outside. That's just abuse, emotionally speaking. So as you watch people on Twitter and Facebook and wherever the heck you are on Instagram, or even in the regular world, it's moving there too. Watch what happens to the victims of shaming. And even if they are being shamed for things that you think deserve some shame, watch what happens to the victims. Watch what happens. Watch what starts to coalesce. Watch what happens to the shamers. Watch what happens to the souls of people. And start to do it differently. We have many hundreds of years of social science research and, well, not many hundreds of years, many decades of social science research that show what happens when people are shamed and when they're attacked. And we have many hundreds of years of human history to understand what happens. It doesn't go anywhere good. So can we, emotionally speaking, become more intelligent about what real change requires, which is the change from inside, and what real influence requires, which is that people care about you, that you are considered a worthwhile and knowledgeable person, and that you are someone who's trustworthy. If you come and shame people, then you're none of those things, right? You're none of those things. So don't be surprised if the response is this, or people just shining you. Don't be surprised, because you are engaging panic in people. You are not engaging their own healthy shame. So that's my little sermon on shame. And you're like, no, I feel shamed. Well, hopefully what you feel is your own real shame coming forward and saying, dang, yeah, I remember that last time, and I've seen that, and I've seen that, and I've seen it 100, 1,000 times over. Emotionally speaking, shame needs to come from inside the person. And any correctives need to come from people they care about and who are trustworthy and are seen by them as valid sources of information. Become that, and you don't have to use shame. The end. See you soon.